I always sing along to that. It's so peppy.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to episode 48 of Story Strategy Live, injecting humor into your books, even if they're not comedy or rom-com. Hi, Dawn. How are you today?
Hi, I am good. How are you?
Good. I hear my internet is choppy, though, so be warned.
Okay. I'll just keep going.
I think it has to do with the fact that it is like dumping snow outside here in Colorado.
That is crazy.
I hate it. It's not fair. I was fine with lots of snow until like April 5th. And then I feel like there should be a hard stop.
Yeah, it was rainy here today, but it was like in the 70s or it's almost hitting 80.
I wore my parka today. The long one with the furry hood.
I don't even own a parka and never intend to. Hi, Julie. Well. Hi, Brooke. Hi, Kate.
Hey, guys.
Hanging out with us today.
Very nice. Well, I hope it's not snowing where you live.
Me too, because the snow is bad.
It'll be gone by tomorrow. That's the nice thing about it. It'll fall and then it melts, and it's just anyway. That's
so you have good news. You have exciting news.
Well, it's been a crazy week. I have 2 books launching this week. So one book comes out tomorrow with Marika Ray. We co-wrote a rom-com. We call it the textbook because it's about texting, kind of about texting. That's the setup. Is the heroine gets the hero's phone number, but she actually thinks it's the phone number for a guy she danced with at this wine festival, but he didn't really like her that much, so he gave her his buddy's phone number. And so she engages in this texting relationship, and it turns out, anyway, you'll see. You'll have to read it. But that's called Texting with the Enemy.
Okay, I know the name of the book is Texting with the Enemy, and now she is frozen again. So, okay, we heard Texting with the Enemy.
I'm back. Are you back?
I am back.
And then I had kind of a secret launch on... Okay, so on Tuesday, I launched a book that is sci-fi romance / shifters and paranormal under a different pen name, which is not a big secret. It's Lulu West is my sci-fi romance pen name. So, and that was kind of just I don't know, for fun experiment. So there's been a lot going on. What about with you?
Where did you come up with Lulu West as your pen name?
I don't know. Where did I come up with the Delancey Stewart?
Well, it just sounds like Lulu West sounds like one of those pen names that you come up with on one of the games of like, you know, the name of your first pet and the direction your car is currently facing or something like that. So it's a good name. I just was interested where you came up with it.
I don't know. It just like that was the name. It was in my head. I didn't really think a lot about it. I did look at other sci-fi romance author names just to sort of see if there was a pattern, and it seemed like it fit. I don't know.
I think it's a cool name. I like that name. And okay, so
what else?
Well, we were supposed to be talking about tropes today. And so I have to admit that if anybody was like, oh, I watched last week and they said they were going to talk about tropes, but this thing says humor, that is totally on me because I have lost the ability to read a calendar.
I assert that nobody pays any attention to what we say is happening next week. If they show up, they show up. If they don't, they don't. And they're like, oh, I guess we're talking about this today. But if you're disappointed, sorry.
Yes. I am sorry if you thought we're going to talk. The topic was twisting tropes. And the twist is we're talking about them next week. So that's how we're twisting the trope.
Yes.
But today we're talking about humor. And we're good at humor. I like our humor talks. I think we have... I'm hilarious.
I find myself very funny.
Right.
How dare you say I'm not?
Julie says my pen name came from the name of a friend's dog.
That's like Indiana Jones in the temple, or the one with his father in it, and he's like, Indiana was the dog's name.
Yep. Yes, I guess I should start writing something under Penny's name. I could
the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I could be Penny Charlie, but that doesn't fit. That doesn't
ring. Doesn't have the ring.
Yeah,
I don't
doesn't
know.
have a ring. So we're talking, this is our spring cleaning month. And so we're covering all of our topics that don't fit in other places. And so today we are talking about fitting in humor, even if you're not writing a rom-com.
Yes, but why in the world would we do that? Why would you care if you had humor? If you're like, if I'm writing a serious book, why do I need it to be funny?
Well, we're going to talk about several reasons for that.
Okay. Yeah. Because that, I think, is the question that people would be asking if they are asking any question right now.
Yes. The fact is, life is just funny and things are weird, and you need the varying emotions, not just the intense fear all the time or the intense adrenaline all the time or the deep sorrow all the time. You have to mix and match those to provide a well-rounded reading experience for the reader.
Well, because if you think about it, like real life stuff, like for instance, my mom was dealing with her mother having Alzheimer's disease, and it wasn't funny. It was awful. But she would tell me stories kind of in the like an anecdote about stuff that her mother would say or do. And this is my grandma, you know, this was kind of sad, but she thought she was on a cruise most of the time. And she would say things about the food and about the porter not being very friendly and stuff. And so my mom would just sort of play along, and she would come home and tell me about it. And I said, God, that's kind of funny. And my mom was like, you have to laugh about it, because if you didn't, you would just cry all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the same thing with like a really serious book. You need maybe a moment of levity to kind of, because otherwise, why would you want to read a book that just makes you sad and feel horrible?
And those emotions are all very valid, and laughing and crying are very close.
Right.
And I had an experience, when my great grandmother passed away. We all loved my great grandmother. She was absolutely fabulous. It was this really hard time for our family. And so we were at the funeral. I'm sitting next to one of my cousins, that him and I should not be allowed to sit next to each other at any point in our lives, but definitely not at funerals. And we've spent a lot of time sitting next to each other at funerals. And my uncle, who would have been my grandmother's son-in-law, was giving the eulogy. And a very serious moment. Everybody's, and what he was talking about her husband, and he meant to say was that when Sam and Nellie met, they got married very quickly because Sam was leaving for World War II. Mm. What he said in front of this entire church full of people was, when Sam and Nellie decided to get married, they did it right away. And I remember looking at my cousin, and we made eye contact, and him and I lost it. Like, we were both like asthmatic seal, can't get enough air back in, laughing.
That's super appropriate at a funeral.
Yes. And so like I'm leaning on him, and he's like got his arm around me like he's comforting me. And he's going, we got to stop. We're going to get in trouble. And we were 20. I was 22 or 23. I mean, we were not little kids, and he's older than me. But so we're laughing, and like my aunt down the row like thought we had gotten really upset. So like she's digging tissues out of the box, like down to us. And so, but that moment that it released the tension for a moment. And I think, that happens in real life, but you also need it to happen in the books. Of your reader can only take so much tension, and they can only take so much I'm going to say this without messing it up, sustained emotion of so much of the same emotion until that emotion isn't effective anymore. And so that's why you've got to have those ups and downs. You've got to add the humor in, even if it's a super serious book. And it doesn't have to be like a snort laugh moment. It can be just one of those like, okay, I can breathe for a second. Now let's get back into the thriller part of it.
Well, and you also need to remind your readers, no matter what's going on in the story, that unless you're writing paranormal or whatever, your characters are human. And so they will experience a broad range of emotions. And if they're going through this crazy sustained suspense thing that you're writing, they would need a break too. So showing them in sort of a lighthearted moment, even in the midst of this horrible thing happening, is pretty realistic. And I think I think it helps build relationships with your readers too, to kind of, you're taking them on a journey and they're trusting you to take them on a good journey and also to be careful with them. And so you want to kind of meter out the pain and angst and agony, and make sure that you're not giving them, something they can't handle. So they're trusting you to make sure that you're giving them a little relief when they need it.
Yes. And I love the quote that you found for us.
Oh, yes. So Joss Whedon, he's like, name some stuff. Is he the supernatural guy? Buffy
the Vampire Slayer.
What else? I know
he was involved with Marvel. He was involved with Firefly.
Okay, Firefly. That's what I was thinking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So great storyteller.
Yes, very good storyteller. Not a great person from some of the things I've heard recently, but a great storyteller. So we're just going to separate that and we're going with his storytelling.
Okay. I don't know a lot about the guy. But I found this quote that I thought was useful, because if you think about a show like Buffy, like that was pretty serious. I mean, vampire hunting and whatnot. Yes, it was fake because it was in a paranormal universe, but still, like, there was some heart-wrenching moments in Buffy, but there was always humor too, right? So Joss Whedon said, make it dark, make it grim, make it tough, but then for the love of God, tell a joke.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's very important, because people do make jokes when they're uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially people like us who love to laugh, and my mouth sometimes works a lot faster than my brain. Yeah. And so sometimes the more uncomfortable you are, the more you try to, if I can get everybody to laugh, this is going to be okay. And so that fits, and you can have, and not every one of your characters is going to be like that. But if you have any amount of ensemble characters, you're always going to, I shouldn't say always, usually you're going to have somebody that has that same mentality. And if you look at Friends, which I understand Friends was a comedy, but if you look at Friends, there's a scene with Chandler where I don't remember what he says, but he's meeting somebody new for the first time, and he says something and nobody laughs. And then he sticks his hand out and he's like, "Hi, I'm Chandler. I make jokes when I'm uncomfortable." And that makes everybody else start laughing. And that make characters feel, again, like real people. They feel like fully formed people.
Right. Amanda says, I have a need to break my tension with humor. Sometimes it isn't appreciated, which sounds like the Chandler joke there.
Yes. But I have to say, I know Amanda, and she's hilarious, and I appreciate her humor all the time. So it's fine.
My humor is sometimes not appreciated either, Amanda, if you can believe that. Mostly here at home. Well, when my children don't respond when I'm to that, make to strangle my internet provider. So if you heard,
okay,
I can
we
hear
only
you
heard like every other word. We can only hear like every other word. But I think you said that your children don't respond to your jokes. Yeah.
They don't. And sometimes when no, it's not you, Julie, it's me. Sorry.
You're trying.
Yeah, no, when they don't respond to me, I will make their voices for them and make them say the things that I think they should be saying, which I find very amusing. They're always like, "Don't do that."
Thank you so much, Mom. Oh, yes, love you too. That's a mom thing. Doesn't everybody do that?
Or like, "Oh, I didn't realize we didn't have a full-time maid when I left my entire breakfast sitting on the counter. So sorry." So I thought maybe we should give some sort of practical examples of ways that you can work humor into serious scenes. Can you think of any?
Well, I think we missed one little reason of why to use it that I think is also important. And that is to lull the readers into a false sense of security.
Oh, yeah.
Before something big happens. And
I think that would be like a thriller or a mystery, probably.
Yeah, you have the moment where everybody just kind of laughs. And that's where you have the moment like in the like buddy cop comedies where they're going into some kind of serious situation and like one of them trips over something and the other one's like, "You make that noise again, I'm going to shoot you myself," or something like that, to be like, "Oh, it's all going to be fine." And then
Look, they're
the world
laughing.
ends.
And then one of them gets shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So some examples. You put a note in here about you create inside jokes with the readers.
Right. Well, and so I think that's maybe easier if you have a series. But as you're introducing characters, like I have in my single tree series, there's Gran, who is crazy, and she is a humorous character to begin with. And my single tree series is rom-com, so it's not a great example. Example of that. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can see you now.
Sorry. But having something that your readers come to know about a certain character, like that this character always trips on her own feet, or this character tends to be carrying a weapon, or whatever, is like, as long as you don't do it overtly, it just sort of gets shown here and there. The reader is kind of like, oh, like I knew that was going to happen. I know that character. Like it's sort of a way to relate to your readers and bring them in and make them read a little bit more carefully too.
Well, I know in Nora Roberts' J.D. Robb series, she has Eve Dallas, and that series is not humorous by any means. I mean, it's amazing, but it's not humorous. Yeah. And Eve is constantly having to fight with the vending machines at work. And she constantly has to have like somebody else buy her a drink from the vending machine because the vending machine just hates her and won't accept her little credits thing that they use and that kind of thing. Right. And so I think you can work it in that way. And I think that's a lot of fun. Another thing is like, yes, I read all the books. I've seen all the movies. So in Twilight, there's, again, not a whole lot of humor going on, but there was a great scene in one of the last books of Twilight that I loved, where Rosalie and Jacob are always kind of at each other. And at one point she's supposed to be making him something to eat. I don't remember the whole situation, but she bends the bowl so it looks like a dog bowl and brings it to him. And so that kind of little things, you know, even though that wasn't something that was consistent throughout the series, that very much fit her character and that very much fit the situation. Right. And so I think you can look for places where you can that help the reader, like you said, it draws them into that character, and then you set up the situations, which are usually very organic, that where something humorous is going to come out in it.
Right. And I think you can use humor to really show your reader who your characters are, because the things that they will make jokes about are very revealing. And no two characters would have the exact same sense of humor. So you can, you know, one person might be very sarcastic, but I read an article that showed how you could also use like a sarcastic statement to drop in backstory or info that the reader needs that you don't want to do in an info dump. Like, please, Mom, I'm 23 years old. You know, that way, like, okay, we understand you're a sarcastic little, right, and you're 23 years old and you and your mother don't have a great relationship, but you got it all in 5 words.
Right. Instead of having the whole, I don't have a great relationship with my mother, and when she calls, I have to remind her that I'm 23. And yes.
Yes. Look how many words you saved there.
Yes. Well, and so some examples that we came up with is the amazing scene in Steel Magnolias, which I loved. Steel Magnolias, I will bawl through the end.
So long.
I could quote it for you. I cry every single time.
Oh, I do too.
But, the amazing scene where they have just buried her daughter, and Sally Field is having the complete breakdown in the cemetery. And she's talking about how she's so mad. She's so mad about the situation. She just wants to hit somebody, which everybody who's lost somebody, you can identify with all of that. And she's like, I just want to hit somebody. And then they grab Weezer and they're like, here, hit her. And it releases that tension for a minute because it's stunning.
Yeah.
And so I think you can use that as well for that character, for the character who does that and throws Weezer in the middle there, that fits. That seems like something she would do in that moment. And part of what really makes it funny is the fact that it's so unexpected and it's out of place, but you know it's coming from a place of concern and it's coming from a place to help the other character deal with what's going on right there. I'm going to pretend like Nancy agrees with me because she hasn't moved yet. So we're going to keep talking. The other thing that we talked about is if you watch the Marvel movies, which have some serious themes and there's some darkness, there's always humor in there too. And so now I'm here alone. I'm going to keep talking like y'all can hear me. If somebody can let me know if y'all can still see me, I would really appreciate it. So talking about Marvel, there's always a joke. If you've seen the end of the first Avengers when and she's back. Okay. we're talking about Marvel now.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
So let's talk about if you see the end of the first Avengers movie where Iron Man like saves the world and he's falling and you think he's gonna die, and I'm totally spoiling this movie, but I'm assuming everybody in the world who's going to see it has seen it by now. And the Hulk rescues him, and Iron Man's laying there, and you think he's dead, and the Hulk just screams at him, and Iron Man all of a sudden sits up, and he's like, "What happened? Tell me none of you kissed me." And so it's super, super tense moment, but you got the joke there, which is why, in my humble opinion, which is right, I'm just going to lay that out there now, is that Marvel is better than DC.
Oh my God, I can't believe you brought that here today, Dawn.
So
now we're going to have a riot.
I'm just going to sneak that in there because
that wasn't a sneak.
I should say Marvel is better at DC in injecting humor, because DC doesn't have that kind of humor in their movies. It's not they don't aim for that as much as Marvel does.
What's DC? Is that Batman and
Superman and
okay. Yes. Yeah, they try to be more serious, I guess.
Yes, they're dark and broody and yes. I will tell you that, and not to start a controversy, my opinions do not necessarily reflect those. But I will tell you that Batman versus Superman was one of the movies where I looked at my daughter halfway through it and was like, I don't care if both these people die right now. I just want this to end. Because I didn't feel endeared to the character. Their only character trait was that they were broody and blowing stuff up. And so that's where I think Marvel does a much better job with their characterization, as far as you get to see all sides of the character, which is what you're aiming for when you're bringing in this humor.
Yep. Okay. I can understand that. So you have Scream here as an example too. You didn't talk about that yet, did you?
No, I did not.
And that was almost a comedy. That wasn't really a horror movie, right?
That's as much of a horror movie as I do. So I am a big fat chicken. So
there was very little humor in The Shining, for instance.
Right. Yes. Now I will tell you, my lovely, lovely children have been trying to get me to watch the new versions of It. And I read the book, which is proof that you will give in to peer pressure, because the only reason I read Stephen King is because everybody I knew was reading him back then. But I read the book and I saw like the 1980s movie that was not, it was not scary on any level at all, even for me, when I'm, like I said, I'm a big fraidy cat.
How did they make it not scary? I don't understand. It's scary.
It was, to me, because I'd read the book and I had all the visions of the book in my head, the 1980s version of the movie, or it might have been late. No, I think it was the 80s. It might have been the 90s. It was too campy.
Oh.
It wasn't scary to me at all. But my kids keep trying to get me to watch the new It movie. And I'm like, no, because I like to sleep.
Scary. Yeah. And now that they have awesome special effects and stuff, like things are just too real. And like old horror movies, you knew it was fake. You could see that it was fake. It was easier to be like, wow, that's just a movie.
Yeah. They've tried to convince me that it's basically a comedy. that there's enough humor in it that it's based. Now, I have not fallen for this. Just
I would
FYI,
not.
I have
Yeah,
not.
I would hold firm on that.
But according to them, there's also humor in that too. And you do see humor in some horror movies.
Yeah.
Right before something really, really bad happens.
That's that whole lulling people into a false sense of security thing.
Yes. Yeah. You have that moment.
Well, so yeah, we've talked about kind of how you can bring readers closer through like an inside joke if you're writing a series. It can work in one book too if it's just a character that kind of always has this certain thing. It can also get overdone really fast. So
yes,
2 or 3 occurrences in a book, it seems like enough, depending on what the thing is. But other ways that you can add humor to kind of lighten things up. Like secondary characters are a good tool for that, because if you don't want your main character to be funny, you can always have a funny secondary character.
Yeah, and normally those are the ones who end up getting the really good one-liners. You get the secondary character who, if your main character is super intense and super dark, then you've got the secondary person who says what everybody else is thinking, or gets to have the weird little quirk that everybody thinks is kind of funny.
Right.
And then
I'm hesitant to talk because I can see I have only one bar.
Okay. So I will talk for us.
And it makes me think I'm going to like flash out at any moment.
Nancy's just going to be gone. So the other example I wanted to bring up about the ongoing throughout the manuscript is if you've ever seen Deep Blue Sea, which is about genetically altered sharks that are taking over this like water research facility.
That explains why I haven't seen it. I don't like sharks.
Yeah. So one of the guy who plays the cook, has this bird, and it's like a macaw. And it's this terrible, like it says bad things to him all the time. He's talking about how much he hates this bird the whole time. And then like when he starts to get attacked by the shark, like he's suddenly concerned for the bird. And Birdie doesn't make it. Let's just throw that out there right now.
Does it say horrible things before it dies at least?
No, it's flying. It's trying to get away from the shark. But
the shark gets it out of the air?
Well, yes. Don't try to confuse anything with your facts here. Don't go there at all. But
it's a Sharknado movie?
No, it's better. But what makes that humorous isn't the fact that the bird's mouthy and the fact that later the bird gets eaten. What makes it where the joke pays off, and that's where you can kind of weave these things in, where the joke pays off is later when that same guy has a chance to kill the bird or kill the shark. As he's killing the shark, he's like, "That's for eating my bird." And so you can kind of play it off there and have the payoff at the end. Julie, does everyone die in that movie? Just about. There's a couple people left at the end. Samuel L. Jackson is in it, and so if you've seen it, you know that scene. So I don't want to spoil that, but
is he the cook?
No,
with the bird. Oh, okay.
No, he's not the cook.
Well, so one cautionary note, I think just trying to add humor for the sake of adding humor is a bad idea, and that's not what we're recommending. I think you have to understand pretty well your own sense of humor. And if you are not sure, if you're kind of new to writing long form and you aren't sure that you've found your voice yet, you can kind of explore this by just looking at things that you think are funny. For instance, I fall on the corny side. I love Will Ferrell, and Airplane is my all-time favorite movie. So I sort of know which things I think are funny, and I also accept that not everyone finds these things amusing. And then I try to, use that kind of humor, but pull it back enough that it can be amusing to more people. So I think figuring out your own sense of humor is important before you start trying to kind of weave it in and go light.
Well, and I think you also want to let that into your voice. You don't want to fight against that, because one of the things I think I've mentioned before is that I had written a thriller, and a friend of mine read it and was like, "This is great, but it doesn't sound like you."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, good. And she's like, no, why doesn't it sound like you? And because it was very serious and straightforward. And she was like, there's no sarcasm in it. There's no humor in it. She's like, I was looking for my witty friend to show up because this is her book, and she didn't ever show up.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what I needed to hear, because I was working too hard against my own voice.
Well, and I think people do that. I think we feel, if especially, like, I came from a literary background, and I read and I still read lit fic and just a ton of classics. And so I've always thought, like, that it wouldn't be me writing a book. It would be an author writing a book.
Right.
And so I had to set myself aside and be like, okay, but if I was going to write a seriously meaningful book, I would be this person, and I think that comes out. It's your voice just feels very inauthentic. And I don't think it's worth it to fight against who you are. And honestly, it took me, where am I now? 9 years into a writing career to figure out, and I think maybe I started figuring this out about 3 or 4 years ago, but it took me a good 5 years to find my voice and to accept that I'm a humorous writer. That's just who I am. And to try to write a whole bunch of books that don't fit with my voice is not going to work for anyone. So,
well, and even the classics were funny.
Yeah.
I mean, and Jane Austen has some pretty good one-liners. Shakespeare's hilarious if you can understand him. Even the classics are funny.
Well, because you can't sit and toil. I mean, writing books is hard. So to spend a lot of time working at something that is not you it's pointless and not that fun. So I picture Shakespeare sitting in his little, I don't know why I see him like in some kind of a tower overlooking like a street, writing with his quill, and like cackling to himself, because I think he must have been having a great time.
Well, and that's okay too. You can think you're funny. Like, you can, if you're reading your own work and it makes you laugh, that's important.
That's rewarding.
Yes. And of course, not everybody is going to think that the same thing you think is funny. And that is okay too.
Just prepare for the bad reviews.
Yeah.
I had a book club you read Second Chance Spring. Remember there was some taxidermy involved?
Oh, yes. I remember the taxidermy.
Well, so anytime you get a book club, you get a bunch of people coming to read your book who are not part of your normal audience, which is the benefit and also the downfall of a book club, because you'll get a whole bunch of reviews from people who don't normally read your books, don't know your voice, don't care for you, or at least this is my experience. So I had a bunch of people like, I don't understand the taxidermy. Why did we need that? Because it was funny.
That also works to your advantage, because people like me would be like, taxidermy? That sounds awesome. What did they stuff? Let's check it out.
Yeah, like, how did you work taxidermy into a second chance love story? Let's find out. I can do it.
Yes. Challenge accepted.
Amanda says, I wish I could write a rom-com. Not my strength, I believe. Guns and murder and crimes and a little snark. This is my bailiwick. I think it's important that you know that. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't need more rom-com writers. There's too many of us.
We got to look at Julie's comment above that says, damn right, writing is hard. Yes.
It is.
That should totally be like our tagline. Writing is hard. We can help.
We can. Yes.
Okay. So, yes, we talked about finding, what do you find funny? And then look at some authors who do this well. And look at how did they weave that in? And so if you can think of an author who's not, and again, we're not talking about writing rom-coms, we're talking about other genres where that gets mixed in there. So like a lot of Nora Roberts stuff.
Nora's just very funny.
There. Yes, she's very funny. Some other authors that I'm biased to because I know them, Ronnie Lorenz always got some kind of humor, and her books absolutely would not be considered rom-comish at all, but there's always some kind of humor. There's always a character with a one-liner. There's always some kind of slightly odd situation that they end up in. And the same thing, Maya Hughes are like that as well, of definitely super deep angst, wounds that just make you want to cry, and then whole scenes that you're laughing because you're like, yep, I totally understand how you ended up in this situation. And that's the natural way to react right there. So when you're reading things that are in the genre that you want to write, look for those humor bits and look for how did the author work it in.
Right.
And
as with all things, read your comps.
Yes, read your comps, because then okay, so did they do it through a secondary character? Did they do it through the situation? Did they do it through an on-running? No, what's the word?
Long-running or ongoing?
Ongoing secret joke that the readers are going to pick up on. And so you can learn a lot from that.
Yep. All right.
That's what we know about humor.
That's what we
Next week, we're talking about twisting tropes.
We might talk about that.
If I can remember
change our
what
minds.
the topic is.
Don might write notes for something else, and then we'll talk about that instead.
It's been a long week. There was some weirdness. And then we have our 50th show. And we're going to do something fun for our 50th show.
Still. I do have something that I would like to give away. I'll just leave it enigmatic like that. It's not taxidermy. I don't own any taxidermy. Although I will admit that my youngest son and I were looking this morning to see if we might be able to acquire a wombat, but since they're endangered, it's unlikely.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. See, I grew up in a house where we had like we had a stuffed wild turkey, and we had a stuffed rattlesnake, and stuffed ducks, and I'm forgetting something.
Well, my husband has an aunt who is eclectic in a very tasteful way. And her house has been in like the Orange County Review of Homes, and like it's featured in magazines and stuff. And now they live in Carmel, which is very hoity-toity, but she loves taxidermy. And they have a full, like, gigantic mountain lion that sits up on like this armoire thing. And there's like, the heads with the horns, and there's like assorted taxidermy around the place. But it's what I refer to as tasteful taxidermy, because, and why the hell are we talking about taxidermy, by the way? But anyway, it can be done well, is what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we were wrapping up that, and then I got us off on the taxidermy tangent. Sorry. So as always, thank y'all so much for joining. I take full tangent. I apologize if y'all are taxidermy averse. So next week we are talking about twisting tropes. She's looking for the book. I know what she's looking for. We should bring that out during the 50th show. So okay, next week I promise I will make notes about twisting tropes, and we will talk about twisting tropes. That's going to be our plan for next week. So
yes, we will.
Hope y'all have a good week.
Have a good week, guys. Happy whatever today is. I'm just anyway. It's
sorry about the snow.
Yeah. Okay. Hope you have a good weekend, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.